morning everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm sharing with you 5, not 1, but 5 delicious and easy slow cooker recipes. I don't want to say specifically that these are autumnal recipes, but this is the time of year where I get out my slow cooker and make a lot of slow cooker meals. The recipes themselves, however, can be used at any time of the year. So if you're new to my channel and haven't been around here for very long, you won't know that I actually follow the Slimming World plan. I'm trying to lose weight following that plan at the minute. So these recipes that you will see today will be Slimming World friendly. However, a lot of them, actually I think most of them, I have adapted from old recipes that I was using. I will put any links in the description if I can still find them, because I tend to write them all down, or I will just write them in the description box. And the recipes in the description box will be for the non-Slimming World friendly versions of these. So you'll see me making the Slimming World friendly versions, and the recipes in the description box will be for those who don't need to follow the Slimming World plan. I hope that's clear enough for you guys. So today I'm going to share with you how to make a hearty chicken and bacon casserole, a stick to your ribs ham and split pea soup, some Chinese inspired slow cooked pork chops, a delicious sausage casserole, and one of my favourite meals in the entire world, Lardos Lamb. The first recipe we'll be making today is the chicken and bacon casserole, and these are all the ingredients that we'll need for this. I'm using 4 chicken breasts. Now, if you're more organised than I am, you could take your chicken breast out the freezer the night before and defrost it. But I had completely forgot to do that, and these chicken breasts that I got from Asda were suitable from cooking from frozen, so it really wasn't a big issue, but just it's probably better if you defrost your chicken the night before. I'm also using 8 bacon medallions with the fat cut off. The original recipe for this was streaky bacon, so if you're not on Slimming World, you could use the streaky bacon, but obviously that was too fatty to be suitable on Slimming World, so I had to switch it. I'm using 450 ml of chicken stock, an onion, some potatoes. These weren't actually part of the original recipe that I used for this, but when I'm making some casseroles and things like this in the slow cooker, I do like to add potatoes into it when I can, to make it more of a one pot dealio. And it's easier than making it all separate, which I do for some of these meals, but for this one I just decided to do it all one pot. I've got 3 pretty large carrots there, and I will be using about 2 teaspoons of the lazy garlic, but you could also use 2 cloves of crushed fresh garlic too. I'm just too lazy to cut the garlic. I hate cutting garlic. It's one thing that I hate doing in the kitchen. I'll be adding 2 tablespoons of tomato puree and 2 tablespoons of plain flour, which is the only sins that I add to this meal. It works out at 7 sins in total for the whole meal, and that goes into 4 portions, so it's about 1 3/4 sins a portion. I mean, you could just not add the flour if you want to make it completely sin free. It really doesn't affect the taste, but I like to use it to get a bit of a thicker sauce in my casserole rather than just a really runny watery soup like consistency. So it's up to you if you want to use it or not, and like I said, it's not going to affect the overall taste of the meal. So this is just the basic ingredients that I'm using for this dish. It's easily more adaptable. You could add a lot more speed vegetables into this if you wanted to make it even more healthy and Slimming World friendly. And you could even add celery, which the original recipe called for, but no way would I ever add celery into anything because it's the devil's food. I can't stand this stuff, but if you like it, you could also add it to this casserole. This meal actually takes less than 5 minutes to prepare. And I start by switching my slow cooker to the low setting and getting that warmed up. I chop the potatoes into quarters or halves depending on their size. I chop the onion up, and I peel and chop up the carrot too. Then I spray the bottom of the slow cooker with fry light. I chuck in the onions, the carrots, the garlic, the tomato puree, and give them all a quick stir before adding the flour and giving it another stir. I then slowly add my chicken stock, stirring every time I add a little bit just to ensure that the flour is mixed in well and dissolving and not going lumpy. We don't want lumps in our casserole. And then I add the chicken and the potatoes and give it all a good mix together before popping the lid on and leaving it to do its thing. The original recipe that I wrote down for this said that it'd be ready within 6 to 8 hours on low, but actually it's ready in about 5 hours. It doesn't really take 6 to 8 hours. I also, at the end, I try it and see if it needs any seasoning, and I think it needs some salt and pepper, so I stir that in. And I also cube up my chicken breast because I just wanted it cubed on this particular occasion. But if you want to leave the chicken breast whole, you can. And on this particular night, I served it with half a plate of red cabbage. Just getting my speed foods in there for Slimming World. We're now moving on to the sausage casserole, and I will say this sausage casserole is delicious, but it is quite a richly flavoured recipe. So if you don't fancy it being too rich, I will be letting you know as we go how to adjust the recipe so that it's still got plenty of flavour, but doesn't pack too much of a punch. So here's all the ingredients that I'm using for this. I'm going to need 3 teaspoons of fresh thyme as well as 1 tablespoon of fresh rosemary. I'll also add 100 grams of sliced mushrooms, 1 chopped onion. I actually add 1.5 onions on this day because I have half an onion left over from another meal, so I thought I may as well chuck it into the sausage casserole and get that used up. 150 grams of sliced carrot, and I'm using 8 of the Sainsbury's Be Good to Yourself sausages, which are 1 cent each, but you can use any other low sin sausage for this, or if you're not on Slimming World, just use any sausage that you like. For herbs and seasonings, I will add 2 teaspoons of Worcester sauce, 400 ml of beef stock. If you don't want this dish to be very rich, use 400 ml of chicken or vegetable stock instead. I do have salt and pepper there, but I will be trying the casserole first towards the end of cooking to see if I need to use them or not. I'm also going to add 1 teaspoon of chilli. Again, if you don't want it too rich, just don't add it, or add half the quantity. And I'm also going to add 1 tablespoon of tomato puree. And I did almost forget this, I didn't put it out with the rest of the ingredients, but I'm going to add 1 full can of chopped tomatoes. And very like the chicken and bacon casserole, this recipe takes no time to prepare at all. Once you've chopped and peeled all your veg and everything, you just bung it all in the pot together, everything, all the ingredients, give it a good stir, pop the lid on and cook it on low. Again, another recipe that said 8 hours when I originally copied it, but actually it would be done in, I actually think this was done in 4 hours when I cooked it on this particular day. And that was on low, so on high it would take a couple of hours, 2 to 3 hours at the most. And one quick last side note for this dish, if you don't want it to be too rich, use half the amount of the herbs, the rosemary and the thyme, use half the amount, or just use dried ones instead of fresh. And on the evening that we had this for our dinner, I didn't serve it with anything, I just had it all by itself. I think I gave Ali some mashed potatoes and that with it, but I just had 3 of the sausages for 3 cents and the rest was all the veg. It was so nice. Next up is the split pea and ham soup. I usually just call this lentil soup or lentil and ham soup, but I do make it with yellow split peas, so technically it is split pea soup. This is one recipe I don't really follow a recipe for, I just know how to make it. Like, I learned it from my mum how to make it, and I've sort of just been making it so long that I can kind of do it in my sleep. But I have tried to be as precise with my measurements as I can be for this video. So I use 1.5 litres of chicken stock, and I should say that for all the stocks in this video you can obviously use fresh stock, but I chose to use the stock pots because they're easier. I don't really ever make fresh stock these days. I use a whole 550 gram bag of yellow split peas because I like the soup really thick. Like thicker than stew thick, like so thick you could put a wall together with it, like cement thick. But if you prefer your soup more liquidy, just add about 300 grams of the split peas. I do have salt and pepper there, but I actually don't use it for this recipe. That's just a habit for me. I always take out my salt and pepper when I'm making food. I add 4 chopped carrots. And it's meant to be a whole onion, but I only have half an onion left, which sounds quite funny after the sausage casserole half an onion tail. But these were filmed on completely separate weeks, so this is just another random half onion that I had in my fridge. And to make up the other missing half of the onion, I add 1 tablespoon of chopped onion. But normally I wouldn't add any of the dried chopped onion, it's only because I'm missing half an onion. I'll also be adding 3 teaspoons of minced garlic and 1 bay leaf. Oh, and there's me almost forgetting an ingredient again, this time quite an important one, the ham joint. I add this whole joint in, it's about 750 grams, which is just under £2. And I do use smoked gammon for this, but you could use unsmoked if you prefer. I would recommend boiling the ham for 10 minutes before you add it to the soup, just to sort of rinse a lot of the saltiness away, because it can end up being overly salty if you don't, especially when you're using a smoked gammon joint. Again, this is super easy. Chop up your veg, your onion and your carrot. Boil your gammon joint if you wish to. I actually know that this gammon joint's not going to make the soup too salty, so I don't bother boiling it because I've used this one, the Morrison's one, quite a few times. It's not overly salty. So I just chop that into a couple of chunks just to fit it in the slow cooker. And you just add everything into the slow cooker and let it work its magic, which would be on low for 8 hours or high for about 4 hours. And once the soup is finished, I actually take the gammon joints out and just shred them. And you could actually stir some of this back into the soup, but it doesn't actually need the flavour anymore. It's just if that's how you would prefer it. I actually just serve it with a little pile topping the soup, and then I use the rest of it for sandwiches for lunches. I give some to the dogs and the cats. I freeze some, so there's some for another meal. And we actually just had this soup as our main meal one Sunday. I served it with I had mine with a promise roll from Sainsbury's, which is a healthy extra B choice on Slimming World. Ali had his with a tiger roll. And I had intended to have some fruit and yoghurt for pudding afterwards, but I didn't need it. I couldn't eat it, I was so full. This soup is very filling. Time for some slow cooked pork loins. And I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but I am showing you guys these recipes in order of my preference. My least favourite to my favourite, rather than the order that I made them. Not that there was anything wrong with the chicken and bacon or sausage casseroles, they were both lovely and neither of them were particularly in last place. They're just more of a joint 4th place. But they just weren't as good to me or Ali as the soup, these pork loins that I'm going to show you, and nothing came close to my ultimate fave, the Lardos Lamb, which we are coming to very shortly. Anyway, these pork loins are absolutely delicious, and these are all the ingredients that we need to make them. So for just Ali and I used 6 of the pork loin chops because I am going to trim the fat off them and make them Slimming World friendly. And pork, you'll see in a second, pork does tend to shrink, so I reckon on 3 small pork loins each, you'll see how small they shrink shortly. I'm also going to use 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, which I'm counting as 6 sins. I may be wrong, please double check. I'll use 2 tablespoons of the reduced salt and sugar ketchup for 1 sin, that's half a sin a tablespoon. 65 ml of soy sauce, which is sin free, and 2 teaspoons of minced garlic, which is also sin free. Or if you prefer, use 2 cloves of fresh garlic, crushed. And about 1 teaspoon of fresh ginger. And like all of the other previous recipes, I just throw everything into the slow cooker and cook on low for about 4 hours. The recipe again did say 6 hours, but 4 hours was long enough, especially considering how the pork loin shrunk. I think if I'd left them for the whole 6 hours, they would have shrunk to the size of grapes. And these pork loins were so delicious, so good. And on the evening that we had them, I served them with some proper homemade egg fried rice and some stir fry veg. So it's 7 cents in total for the pork loin chops. Divided by the 2 of us, that was only 3.5 cents each. And now for my pièce de résistance. I can't speak French, that's as good as it gets, but this is one of my favourite meals, if not my favourite meal in the entire world. This is my stepmom's recipe, which she went to Greece many years ago and had something, I don't know what it was called, but she calls it Lardos Lamb. And she just randomly made this one day, trying to get all the flavours that she thought were in the meal that she had while she was on holiday. I have adapted this to be Slimming World friendly because it is very fatty, but I'm not gonna lie guys, if you aren't following Slimming World, please follow the non-Slimming World version for this because it is so much better. The Slimming World version I made was very tasty, it just wasn't the authentic Lardos lamb that my stepmom makes and I have made previously. The flavour does come a lot from the fat in the lamb, to be honest with you. But please don't let that put you off, it is still a very tasty meal and something quite different to anything that you'd probably be eating on Slimming World. Unlike the previously easy recipes that we already made, the Lardos lamb does have a few more steps to it. Also, I want to say, it's a little bit more expensive to make Lardos lamb because it is lamb for a start. I actually found it a lot cheaper to make the Slimming World version because the non-Slimming World version is very specific. It has to be shoulder lamb because that is probably one of the more fatty parts of the lamb. And like I said, the flavour relies a lot on the fat. So my stepmom was very specific when she said that I needed to use shoulder lamb. But because I'm making the Slimming World version and I'm trimming off all the fat, I just got whatever diced lamb that I could get and whatever was cheapest, and that actually happened to be Aldi. Aldi is really good for their meat prices and the quality of their meat is also very good. I do rate Aldi very highly for their quality of their meat, especially their steak. I love the Aldi steak. Anyone else agree? So for the Slimming World friendly version of this Lardos lamb, you're going to need a pound of lamb. Like I said, I just got any diced lamb, whatever was cheapest. I will say I got 600 grams thinking that when I trimmed all the fat off it would be roughly about a pound, but actually it was under 300 grams once I trimmed all the fat off. So I do wish I'd got 900 grams and then trimmed the fat off. You need 1 packet of the bacon medallions, or just buy bacon and trim all the fat off, it works out cheaper that way. You'll need some reduced fat cheese slices. It needs to be the processed cheese slices like the ones I'm showing you now. It can't be like cheddar cheese slices or anything like that. It needs to be the processed cheese slices, and the reduced fat ones I sin at 2.5 cents per slice. You need 1 teaspoon of cumin and 1 teaspoon of GARAMASALA. You'll need 1/3 of one of the small bottles of red wine. To make sure I'm okay with my sins and everything, I measure it for 5 cents. I say 125 ml of the red wine is 5 cents. I'm going to make up 1/2 pint of gravy. You could use beef or onion granules for this, but I'm just using the beef because that's what I have. I'm counting this as 4 cents. 1 cent a teaspoon, and I use 4 teaspoons in this. I'm going to add 1 whole onion, which I will dice, and you also add 1 whole garlic bulb. You don't need to peel it or anything, just a whole garlic bulb. I've got 2 there because mine's are really tiddly tiny, so I want to add 2, make sure I get the garlic flavour in there. But you just put these in whole, so no mess, no fuss. And 3 sprigs of fresh rosemary. So the first part of this recipe is really easy, adding it all to the slow cooker. I add my gravy, which I've made up in a jug, and then my onions, my rosemary, and the lamb. Oh, I should also say that I added the cumin and the garam masala into the gravy before I poured it into the slow cooker. You don't need to do that, you could just add it along with everything else. This is just the way my stepmom taught me how to do it, so it's habit for me when I make this to add it to my gravy first, but you don't need to do it that way. I should also note that my slow cooker is set to high for this recipe, so I'll pop the lid on and then I'll wait for the gravy to start to bubble before adding my garlic, and I just plop them in whole, and then after 3 hours I take out my garlic, which is so easy, I just use a spoon and take them out, and then I cook it for a further hour. And once that's done, I take it out the pot and leave it to cool. Now you don't actually need to leave it to cool for the Slimming World version. On this occasion that I made it in the slow cooker one day, and then I done the next part the following day. So once you've taken it out the slow cooker, you could just pop it in an oven dish, which I do the following day, and then you top with the cheese slices. I use 1 cheese slice per person because I'm trying to keep my sins low, and then on top of that you top it with the bacon. And this just adds so much to the flavour of the dish. I can't recommend enough not skipping this part of the recipe. It seems odd to use processed cheese slices, but it really just melts right into the gravy and makes it so delicious. And then you just pop that into the oven and cook for around 30 minutes at 180 until the gravy is bubbling away and the bacon is all cooked on top. And there it is, all plated up. On the evening that we had it, I just served it with some mashed turnip and Brussels sprouts, getting my speed intake in there. And if I had to recommend one recipe that you try from all these recipes that I've shown you today, it has to be the Lardos Lamb. It has to be, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's gave you some new recipe ideas to try out, whether you're on Slimming World or not on Slimming World. And I just want to take this opportunity to pay homage to my really cheap slow cooker. Mine is a Cookworks one from Argos. It was £20 many years ago. Actually, my slow cooker is the same age as my son. It's 13 years old, and for a cheap slow cooker, it has done me well. It has been well used and well loved, and it is still going strong. Please don't ever feel that you have to invest in a lot of money for a slow cooker. I checked today and the cheapest one on Argos is actually $14.99 for another Cookworks one. So please don't feel that you need to go out and spend a fortune on a brand name slow cooker just to make delicious slow cooker meals. You don't. I love my slow cooker. I have no intention of changing it, upgrading it or anything anytime soon. Unless obviously it breaks. But it's still going strong after 13 years, and for £20 that was definitely a really good investment. But again, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like it if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to go and check out my giveaway, guys, because there's just about a week and a half left to enter that, so I will link the video up above. And I'll see you all again really soon.